All right, welcome back everyone to the Vibe EDU podcast. As this is the last episode of the series, as we're talking about leadership. Today we're going to be talking specifically about district leadership. And we have two folks on screen that have worked for the district in various roles. So Mitch, me and you, we're back up today. We're the subs, if you will, on the batting circle. I don't know. I'm going to throw in just as many sports terms as possible. All right. So who wants to start us off? Kim, you want to start us off?
Yeah.
For district leadership?
Sure. I mean, working at a district level is eye-opening, truly. I mean, walking in there on day one, I remember thinking, like, what is my role in all of this? Like, what do you know? What am I supposed to do? It was all kind of like, when it's thrown at you, it is just I don't know. It is a whirlwind and is an experience. And I think that every single person that goes into a district role, like a teacher on special assignment is what I was. Everyone that I've given advice to, I've said, you get to have your vision. We talked about this before. You get to have your vision. What is your vision? And so you got to stay in your lane too. That's another huge thing. So there is a lot of freedom in there, but also you get thrown all these different tasks that you didn't think were your lane that all of a sudden then become your lane also. And that's really, really tricky to navigate. I personally loved working at a district level because I got to go everywhere. I wanted to be with the teachers. I wanted to be in their classrooms on the ground. I mean, I was a teacher for the teachers, and that's what my vision was. I'm going to support them in their classrooms in real time, and I'm going to come back. It's not just going to be like a one and done sort of a thing. And I think working at a district level position like that, you know, people at the top kind of just see a need and they go, okay, you're our gal. So come on in and be our gal. But then they kind of expect you also to be the gal. And that's hard to do when you don't really understand maybe what your role is or your vision. And so I've seen a lot of teachers on special assignment who have done it really, really well. And then also ones who have kind of like floated along. I think I always think of the word impact. It's like, what do you want your impact to be? What do you want your legacy to be? Because by the way, I moved out of that position and moved across the country into a new state. And to know now that teachers are still doing the things in their classroom that I supported them in. They're still talking about kids in the way that we were talking about kids. Those systems, those routines are in their classrooms, 6 years out of being in that district. I think that's the name of the game. What do you want your legacy, your vision to be? But it's hard. It's tricky. That is a tricky position for sure. I mean, I would love to hear TJ, like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think everything you've said is true from my experience as well. I would add, like, the tricky part too is once you're not site-based, it becomes a real game that you're trying to play to communicate. And so I do want to go back to your point about vision, but communication, and I've failed at some of the things I'm going to share. Like, I just, learned on the job kind of thing. But like, I went from being a middle school principal to having 22 sites operationally and 7 principals under me. And I loved that role, especially helping principals with the principaling part of the job and supervising APs. But going from one site to 22 or one site to 4, those of us who are out there and you may be thinking about district leadership, you've got to up your level of communication by tenfold. Because just because you were on site and said something and then went to another site and said something and went to another site and said something doesn't mean that all those somethings were heard. And so one thing when I coach superintendents in particular, that role from a district office, when we coach superintendents, Joe and I, one thing we tell supers more than once in the coaching cycle is your job is to communicate a clear and compelling vision. And what that means is that it's so clear that the people can do the work when you're not there, and it's so compelling that they want to. And so that's just hard, because when you're not on site, you then become like You then have to be glue, the conduit for how the vision gets communicated. So once that vision is clear and compelling, it's everybody else at the district office job to make sure that that's clear as far down into the system as possible. Clear and compelling. And I think that's maybe like the hardest part of district office work, whether you're a supervisor of all the English teachers or a coordinator or your assistant soup or a director. It's making sure that the vision is clear and compelling.
I think when you said the word communication, in my brain, I went to, okay, what were the different ways that I was communicating all of that? Because it can't just be one way. It can't be like one modality of communication. And I remember the first thing I did was put together a website that housed literally my brain. Everything that I had in my brain that I give teachers, I needed it to be on a website, like with videos and visuals and easy things that they could click and print. Because if I went into a school or a classroom, again, we had 18 elementary schools, 7 middle schools, and 4 high schools, and moi. Like, that's a lot. So if I'm going into a school doing a PD, I also want to say, hey, there's this website at your fingertips for you for all of this to continue. If you need something, click here. Or if I was in a classroom and then I was leaving a teacher, I would leave that literally on their desktop. Here, don't forget, it's right here. This is what we talked about. These are the things that I'm expecting because I'm going to come back next time. But I think honestly, my favorite part of the communication piece was I used Instagram. I used Instagram when Instagram was like literally in baby form. And I would, after being in a classroom, leave, get in my car, sweaty, like dripping sweat after being with the children and big behaviors. Maybe there's like eloping, like all of this stuff. I would sit in my car and I'd record myself and I would say, hey, and it was back in the day, I would say back to behavior. And I'd say, hey, back to behavior. This is just what happened. And I would walk them through like in a short 3-minute video, what happened in the classroom. And then what I did to support kid and what I did to support teacher. And it got teachers talking. It got them at night. What were they doing? Scrolling through Instagram and they were watching and they were waiting. And the best part about it is I never said like what grade it was happening in or anything. And they were like, oh, this was me. This was me today. This was me last week. I need this. And that communication piece, I mean, then it spread like wildfire, right? Like the website was there, but they were all tuning in. And so again, talk about clarity in that. There was so much clarity in that. They freaking ate that up. That was good. What are you thinking, boys?
I was thinking the Instagram thing. That's interesting because I literally have interviewed like hundreds and hundreds of leaders and never heard anyone say that. I'm curious not only were the people that you were serving, what their thoughts were on that, because this was probably a little while ago. And
yes,
I know early on social media, it was like the bane of everyone's existence. Like, don't get on it. Nobody get on it.
Yep.
And then, so I'm curious the people that you're serving, their interpretation of that, but then also the higher ups. And did you get any pushback from them?
So that idea actually came from the higher ups. And at the time, I remember thinking like, oh God, I don't want to have to do that. Please don't make me do that. Right. But they said like, Kim, they're coming into your classrooms. Like when I was just in the classroom, right. They were coming into your classroom, like dying to listen to your stories, to all the things. And now that you're here in this position, how do we create that sense of like intimacy? And I was just in your classroom, just listening to you. How do we continue that? And so, I mean, it took practice, right? It's hard to film yourself and sound natural, but I absolutely loved it. And I know that even my mentor teachers who now work for me, right? I pulled them out of the classroom and brought them alongside me for, teaching inside out and supporting schools across the country. They still remember sitting down like with their glass of wine at the end of the day. And they would be listening to me and their kids who are now in high school. They even have memories of this too. They would listen for me to say, back to behavior. And they would like mock it and make fun of it and giggle alongside like their moms. But we still joke about that back to behavior. I mean, it became a thing. It did. And I think it's something that, I don't know, teachers can connect with if that's who you're reaching. If your message needs to be clear to the teachers, right? That's a very, very easy way to get them in. But again, you got to be real about what's going on too. They don't want any sugarcoating. I didn't sugarcoat anything, right? I was very careful with my words, but I didn't sugarcoat anything. And I think that really changed the game for sure.
I think one thing to underscore for listeners is that multiple modalities of communication, number one. And number two, I just would say email is not, when you're at the district office, email is not the form of communication to be using. If you're working in a culture, I know there's people listening right now who are working in a culture where email is being used like a messaging system. Like I email you and you're looking at email and you email me back and I'm looking at email and I email you, and it goes on until all day long we're just emailing each other these short messages. And email was never intended for that. In fact, there were message boards. A lot of districts even adopted like instant message, if you remember back in the day. There's far better tools for that. And if you're in a district office where that's the case with email, I would try my hardest to influence that, to get out of email as a messaging system, because then the expectation from all the teachers, for example, is that you're always looking at your email. And if you've got thousands of people or even a few, you're bogged down with email all day. Then you're not really serving the people in the way they need to be served. You're just responding to them. And we've got to get a culture in schools that gets off of that. We can talk about some of the hows and some of the tips and tricks, but I would say after my first couple of years, I didn't get any emails from my principals.
Because you had set up other channels of communication?
Yeah, the only time that they would email me is if I said, email that to me. Like it was a chain or something and they couldn't solve the problem. But I can talk about systems for this too, but we used Voxer, free version.
For sure.
Voxer doesn't pay Vibe EDU yet. But Voxer is such a great tool. We use Voxer. The four of us, that's how we communicate, is on Voxer. And I know Josh and Kim have Pro, but Mitch and I don't pay anything. We just use the system. Then you create Voxer groups, and what a great way for all of us to keep in touch, so that one middle school principal is not asking me a question that all four middle school principals have to grapple with. Then I'm answering that same question, usually that same day, 4 times. But we created groups, individual chats, whole secondary stuff, operational, and everybody used Voxer.
Okay, I love that. I love thinking about that. I mean, I go back to on day one, district vision was everybody's just going to call Kim when there's a big behavior. You guys, again, think about this. 18 elementary schools, 7 middle schools, and 4 high schools. Think of all of the children. Think of all of the principals. Think of all of the teachers. Like anybody's just going to call Kim and I'm just going to like get in my car and just like drive. Like that was not the plan. And then I would come back. Let's say I was in a teacher's classroom. I'd come back and then of course I'd have a gazillion messages and emails and all these things. I was like, oh my God, what was just happening? Like that was not it. And I remember thinking, Kim, you need a system. How are you really doing this? Right. And so I was able to kind of figure out, okay, I'm going to go a school at a time. I mean, we had cohorts also of teachers who were all in and wanted to be supported. But then I went school at a time, did a PD there. And then the following week, I would say, hey, I'm coming into all your classrooms. Like none of you just get to like sit back and relax. I'm coming into all your classrooms. I'm going to spend some time with you. And then I would track that. We had like Google Forms where I could track what was going on in there and then come back again, cycle 2. But cycle 2 ended up being COVID, which sent me home and not able to go back into those classrooms. But that was the vision and the plan, was to cycle it so that it wasn't Kim, trying to put out fires all the time. I think tracking through data too, we were able to kind of show that it needed to be more than a one-man job. And we were able to put 18 support staff into the elementary schools the following year so that they could support teachers. And then I was coaching them. I mean, it was just, man, it was a machine, right? I think that's when you know that you're doing like the district work the right way, is when it feels like a well-oiled machine and people are feeling the support. They are feeling heard and valued in it also. I think that's when you know that you're doing it right. But running around putting out fires or getting the emails one by one, like that's not it. And that's not it.
I had a friend, I was a mentor for new teachers in my district. So I wasn't working at the district office, but I was there a lot. And a friend who oversaw that program was like one of the programs. It was probably, I don't know, halfway through the school year, maybe 3/4. And I had just popped my head in her office just to say hi, because I was over at the district for some reason. I'm like, hey, I sent you an email and I didn't hear back from you. And because we were just kind of friends and she trusted me, I think she was just like, come in, sit down. What was your email about? Like, let's talk about it. And she said, I just have never heard somebody say this. I've just lost control of my email inbox. Mm-hmm. Like there's no possible way I can catch up or keep up.
Yeah. And
she just walked away from it. And it just shows. I mean, she's incredible. She's been principal. She's done all the stuff like you would think. So to me, it feels more like what you're saying, TJ. The most, the district leaders that I've met in whatever capacity that have time for people and conversations and being present have the best systems in place. There's just too much. If you don't have systems in place, it just doesn't seem possible.
It's not, but it's also not as common as you would think for people to develop those systems.
So that's my question. What I'm wondering here is somebody putting myself in a role of like, well, I want to work at the district office, right? I know plenty of colleagues who haven't got really excited about their role and what they were doing, way to like broaden their impact and all of that. But where do districts go? Or is everybody having to make up? I was going to say, where do districts go to learn systems that have been proven that work? Or is it so site and district specific that they're left to make those up on their own, or some hybrid of those? What do you do if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, we need some systems? Like that just seems overwhelming to me, right? From the jump. Like, yeah, we know. That's why it's overwhelming.
Well, I mean, my one response to it is like hire a coach. So every one of those leaders you're talking about, I think they would tell you they had a great mentor or a great coach at one point in their lives. Like if you've never worked for a really awesome principal as a teacher, or you have been a principal or you are a principal now and you don't have a coach, superintendents. Lots of superintendents who I know have coaches. Joe and I coach superintendents on down, assistants, directors, principals. You learn a lot from coaches. I always have. Couple of things that I'll say as like tips and tricks. One thing and I could hear this in Kim's description of her role, is to have a vision. And when you have that vision for what you want to do, what you want to support, what you want to change, that's going to determine the percentages of your day, right? I want to spend 30% of my day in schools. I would tell my admin assistant, which I'm going to get to in a minute, these are the most important people out there. I would tell my admin assistant, like, here, I'm going to spend, I'm not coming in the office. There's no day that I'm stopping here first. Because I learned really early, that if I stopped at the district office building first, I was never going to get out of there.
Yep.
So my day always started in a school. I want to say 95, 98% of the time. There were times I had to go to a meeting at 7 or 8 that was at the office. But most of the time I orchestrated my day for the first 2 to 3 hours to be in schools. And I would typically do 2-3 visits in a day, so I could hop from one school to the next. And then my car became my laboratory, meaning all the phone calls that stacked up while I was in the school. That's what I was doing when I went from school to school. I would literally listen to my Voxer messages which, by the way, I'm not talking about legal and personnel issues. I'm talking about just the day-to-day stuff. Like, obviously, there's reasons to document and use email, but day-to-day, I listen to those Voxers on my way to the car in the parking lot. So systems like that. And then last thing I'll say about email is my admin assistant at the time, and this was true even when I was a principal, organized my email. I didn't have anything coming into email that was such confidential information that she couldn't see. Everybody knew she was the first line of defense. By the time I became an assistant superintendent, I didn't look at email either, Mitch. To your friend's point, I didn't just walk away from it, though. My admin assistant would go through it several times during the day, and she had blocks of times that were just for that. And it wasn't just one, so several times during the day. She would pin anything that needed my response. She would Vox me about something that seemed immediate. And then she would schedule me time to respond to the ones that she pinned. So it wasn't even my responsibility to find the time to respond to the ones that were pinned. She would block and say, I think you need 45 minutes here tomorrow, Tuesday afternoon, to do emails that came in on Monday, or whatever the case may be. And then a lot of times I didn't do those from the office either. I did that in between meetings at a school, or right when the school day got done, not when the school day was still going. The work day was still going, but the school day was done, because there was no more need for me to be in classrooms in schools because there wasn't anybody there.
My favorite thing that you said was that 95% of the time you did not start your day at the district office. And I did the exact same thing. Now, let me tell you though, being a newbie walking in, right, working for the district office, what did everybody do? Everybody started their day at the district office, in their cubicle, in their office, and they're very, very busy creating and typing and talking and all the things. And I remember walking in there going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. This is not for me. I don't want to spend my day here with the fluorescent lighting in a little cubicle with you all. Like, I've got to be where the people are. Like, that's like, honestly, that was my thing. I was like, Ariel, get me to the people. I need to be with the people. And so I always, unless we had a meeting or something scheduled, I always started my day with the people. And guess what? I was the weird one. I would go on a limb and say I was the only one that worked at the district office that was like rarely there. But I did, like you said, schedule time, or then you come back and you pump out the stuff that you need to pump out. I mean, create an entire website, that takes some time, right? But you schedule that time, or you block out that time, or you set aside a whole week to pump it out one go, so that it's out and into the world and done. You can check that off your list. But I'm so glad you wrote the book, Time, Tools, and Tactics, because I think it's so needed. Like Mitch said, how do you know? Like, how do you know that you need systems? I think if you feel like you're fighting time, then you need that.
When you feel like what we talked about earlier about being triage, of just running around like a crazy person, obviously that means that you need systems in place. And I think TJ's just talking about the tip of the iceberg, because I think there's a lot more that can be established. But I mean, how many emails have we gotten and then that person shows up at your door or calls you on the phone right away after this email, and then your inbox is just flooded with communication that's already occurred in a different form, but it's just sitting there just taking up space. So I think email's the devil. I talk about that a lot, because I think you could easily, like you said, Kim, you could sit at that cubicle, or you could, if you're a building leader, you could sit in your office all day long, and all you could be doing is just reviewing your email and responding, because I would go out of my office for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I come back and I'd have 200 new emails just sitting in my inbox. So, I mean, that can be extremely overwhelming for a district leader, especially when you're talking about the scale, Kim, that you're talking about, with a ton of schools, a ton of staff, a ton of students. I mean, that could get away with what Mitch was talking about, that lady just feeling overwhelmed and just throwing her hands up and saying, I'm done with it. I think you could easily get to that point if you don't have systems in place.
Yeah.
Let's test it though. Let's give people some tests just in case, because I find that when we're coaching folks, these are common problems that people feel is just a function of their job. So like a couple tests. If you've looked at an email more than once, you're failing at it. So this is like a true, I'm being candid here, but this is like a true piece where if you get an email and you look at it and you kind of read it, but you don't read it all the way, but then you mark it as unread because you got to go back and read it again, all of that's energy towards something. So that's a test. Like if you're looking at emails more than once, like you have to block the time, respond to the ones that are important, and then you read them when you read it and you respond when you read it. Or you maybe need to go do some research or something and then you respond to it in the next block. Those are systems. People need help. So you probably have people, if you're a school leader or a district leader, you probably do have access to some people around you who can help with this. And we've got to quit like thinking that our emails are so confidential that somebody can't read them. If you're getting personal stuff in your work email, just change that. And then that's not something somebody needs to see.
I'd say scheduling, if you're trying to schedule something like a messenger, similar to what you were saying, TJ, like you should have somewhere, to Kim's point, of like a website or a link or something that everyone has access to be able to schedule something versus trying to communicate 30 times to find a day and a time that works for both of you. Mm-hmm. I know early on in my leadership journey that I did that often, and I was wasting hundreds of minutes just corresponding with the teachers about the evaluation process for them to come in the 4 times a year that they had to come into. How dumb is that? All I had to do is set up a Calendly link it to my Google or Outlook, and have every one of my staff members have access to my Calendly.
Yep. Here's another test. If you're regularly getting emails that are one-liners that feel like somebody else is on the other end of a text message waiting for you to respond, that's a bad sign. Your emails should be about important stuff that people need to explain in detail. Here's another quick test. If you're regularly getting emails and you don't respond to them and then that thing is over. So like somebody emails you at the middle of the day at 1:00 and what they're doing is happening at 1:00 and you're someplace else as a district office employee in one of the 18 sites Kim's talking about, and you're in a classroom working with students and working with teachers. And then at 1:30 comes or 1:40 and you see that email and it's no longer live, like that thing is over now, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
That means that they thought that you were going to be able to respond in the moment when they needed you. Now, there are some people's jobs that are like that. Some that's operational jobs, some special ed jobs, some student support jobs for sure. But that's better for some other form of communication, even a walkie-talkie. Like we had district-wide walkie-talkies. And I'm talking a big footprint, 13,000 kids. And you could do private channels. Or even your own text is better than an email, but text can get out of hand too. It's back to systems.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say, in the systems, context matters depending on your role. Like you two said, starting out in the field, well, there's district office jobs where it would make no sense to start at a school. Like, right. So it's all, I think it's the context matters for the systems that are in place. And I would say one test would be if you're responding to email at like 2 a.m, something's something's not, you need some systems in place. I had a principal who I dearly loved. She was an incredible leader in some ways, like really gifted in certain ways, but you would get almost incoherent email replies at all hours of the morning. And it was just fatigue, I think, just feeling like I need to respond to all these. So,
yeah, I mean, the one thing about that too for district leaders, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I got better at it later in my career. Is the people don't need you to respond at 9:00 at night or 2:00 in the morning or Sunday at 8 a.m. Like some emails need that, but I've told people who email me and it's an emergency, I'm like, you need to pick up the phone. Like call me on the phone on a Sunday afternoon and tell me what the crisis is. Because if you email me on a Sunday, I might not look at the email on Sunday. Like this Sunday, I was at a soccer game, my daughter's soccer game. Like I'm not looking at email while that's going on. The last thing I want is her to see me on the sideline staring at my phone. That's not cool as a parent. Then you rob everybody. So, but if you do have to do email on a Sunday, I did email every Sunday. Just mark it as getting into people's inboxes at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Like that in and of itself is a system. Like if you have to do email at 9 p.m., that doesn't mean people need to receive emails at 9 p.m. And this is really especially important for district office staff because you're like on a little bit higher up on the organization chart. So people get that email at 9 p.m. and like, oh, I have to respond to this. No. And you might not even be thinking, like, don't respond to this. But that's not how people feel when they get that email. Even if like you're the ELA coordinator, right? It matters to the ELA teachers when you're in their inbox. They're just like us. They want to check that off. We'll check it off tomorrow morning.
That's the mashup, though, of where systems and culture have to come together, because there is definitely this false, and I want to preface this by saying I've not been a school leader or a district leader, but there's this, I would say, false narrative that forms that like it's a badge of honor to not have enough time to eat during the day. I just don't have enough time, and I'm sending an email, and it not that anyone's doing it deliberately, but it's kind of like it's part of the job description or something, this crazy out of balance. And again, I'm not necessarily even advocating for balance in that, in a traditional sense, but you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, Mitch. And I think that you're right. Everything's culturally, the context of the culture. Like if you have a culture where the higher ups do want you to respond at 9 p.m., like I would say, there's some things we're saying here, I wouldn't do. I'm talking about from a leadership position and trying to change that culture. I don't respect that though. And Joe and I have had long conversations about this. Like if you're doing that to garner respect, I'm working at 2 a.m., I'm working at 9 p.m., I'm always on, I'm always available to you. I think that the days where that type of leadership was highly respected for people to just give all of themselves to the work, I think those days are mostly gone. Mostly.
Good.
Like what I see when you're emailing me at 2:00 in the morning is that you're disorganized. What I see when you're emailing me 100%. At 9 p.m. on a Sunday is that you don't care about me.
You guys, I have another podcast. You know this? I have another podcast called Unleashing the Bison.
Really?
Did
it just release?
No.
A new episode?
Been a while. But I had just put out an episode 2 weeks ago, Mitch, 2 weeks ago, that said something about nobody gets the busy badge. There is no busy badge, right? And I think that so many times leaders at the district level, what I hear, especially when I've been working with them now, right, as someone who coaches district leaders and coaches, I hear, oh, I'm just so busy. I'm so busy. But again, like what you're saying, like nobody gets the busy badge. Like if you're saying that you're busy, then I'm saying that's a signal that maybe there's some systems that we need to lean on to support you so that you don't feel as busy, right? I think I did a whole entire episode about that because we're in the busy season. The holidays are busy. We're all busy. Everybody is busy, but there is no busy badge for being the busiest, And like we've been saying, I think that's a culture thing. And we need to rewrite the narrative about that, especially when it comes to those district leaders.
So for a school or district leader on the call, as we wrap up, I heard identify a coach, find a coach if you don't have one. Don't go at it alone, in other words. And what's one book, TJ?
Well, now you're really talking about context.
And everybody, listen, I'm only saying this because Joe and TJ, and Joe is TJ's co-author. They have an organization called the Schoolhouse 302. They write leadership books. So I'm just saying but for this specific topic of district leadership overwhelm or school leader overwhelm, what's one book? A starting place.
I mean, I always go old school on the district stuff, like Marzano, district leadership that works. I think I said it on this show before, I would be reading in two categories. I would be reading school leadership and I would be reading in pure leadership. Because we're actually going to find, this is unfortunate, but we're going to find way more tools for being productive, like we're describing in the literature on leadership more than school leadership. Mm-hmm. And so when Joe and I write, just like this new book, Time, Tools, and Tactics of Instructional Leadership, we pull a lot. Like the first couple chapters are just about time. We pull all that stuff from the business world. And so we try to infuse that in for school leaders. We have in all 7 of our books, because that's sometimes missing when you ask, like, what's a good book for district leaders? There are good books for district leaders, but I'd say also looking at leadership, works of leadership outside of education as well. Like, even think about the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. The principles in that book could help any district leader understand more about how to use their day and their time. I know,
or Atomic Habits, or there's a bunch of productivity literature out there that's, I guess, really looking at the business world, but it is the same as what TJ was saying with the principal or district leader. You're the CEO of your organization. Yeah. So
running a school, running a district's a business. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And what TJ was talking about before with the coach, I mean, that's an outside perspective. Someone else coming in that is someone that's not from within the organization to pinpoint things that are deficiency for you to create a system for. That's the same thing with the literature. And I think that's the mindset that we need to have, is that we can learn from other sectors to make ourselves better leaders. So to keep an open mind. All right. With that, we're going to wrap this up as this is the last series of our leadership series, but we are always looking for more questions, as we're going to be jumping into a Vibe EDU mailbag. And so what we do is we take questions from you. So if you have a comment or question that you want to drop into this episode specifically for this leadership series or a previous series, we will take any topics, any questions from you, so that we can address it in that special episode. We try to do that between every single series, so that way we're coming back. I know a lot of people have some thoughts and comments and feelings on some of the things that either we said, or they're looking for more information, and we'd love to get that input. And of course, if you're looking for a coach, all 4 of us do that on the screen. So you can hit our website, check out all the different services that we provide. Obviously, we want to help and assist in any way possible. So make sure that you're finding those at those links in the show notes. And of course, reach out if you need anything. And I want to say I appreciate each one of you. I know all of you are very busy. Love coming on the screen with you, talking through all these different wonderful topics. And I can't wait to jump into the mailbag. And with that, see you next week.